we're at a really, really interesting point in human history and human development. And if we don't want to feel too dragged down or pessimistic by it, we can at least be thankful to be in a fantastically stimulating and interesting period of transition. It's clear we're coming out of a carbon age. We're not out of it by any means. We're burning up as much of the stuff as we can get out of the ground. But it's also very clear that we're on the edge of definitely the transition of getting out of it. What isn't clear is where things are going to go from here. I see different paths ahead. There's one path which is where everybody goes, well, gosh, climate change, yes, that's really serious. We can see that what the scientists are telling us is a major threat. We'd really better do something about it. So let's get out of fossil fuels as quickly as we can. Let's really reduce those emissions. And that's kind of like, that's a rational approach, which I think is the one that we all hope and pray for. That's one pathway. That's the one that we all need to work towards, and we need to stay focused on, and we need to keep, by talking about it and promoting it, we need to make that into a reality. I have to say, there are other pathways which are also nascent at the moment and just starting to pick up. One is one of abject denial, where we collectively agree that we're not going to talk about it, we're not going to deal with it, we're going to keep it as some fringe issue, and we're going to just keep going for as long as we can until we hit some kind of brick wall. There are other kinds of collective denial strategies which are even more worrying. There's ones where we express our fear or concern over deteriorating nature of world's climate by some completely aberrant external thing. We start, I don't know, it could be anything. I mean, historically humans under conditions of stress have behaved in extremely bizarre ways. It could be war, it could be scapegoating, it could be, I don't know, it could be rounding up and shooting gypsies, it could be any number of things. The ways that people express their deep concern and fears doesn't necessarily have to be on the actual issue at all. It could be something quite different. And then there's a concern that what will happen is that people will do what historically, again, consistently they've done, which is that when they get scared and when they feel powerless, that they elect or they abnegate their own responsibility by going to some aggressive father figure, by giving power to some other authority. And I wouldn't even necessarily call that green, but it's some form of dictatorship. You just go, oh please, we don't know what to do with this, you take over. And personally, although my fear is that we're now leaving this so late, that in order to even deal with it within the terms of what the science tells us we're going to be facing a very great threat of a carbon dictatorship. And of course, as we know, when you give that level of power to any central authority, you also start losing your position on other issues, human rights and freedom of expression as well.
And did you want to ask some stuff, Dan?
Yeah.
We should probably be quite quick because it's 22.
Go.
Okay. I was wondering if you could just bring out one of the things that you mentioned in the talk. I mean, you brought up these two slides, and you asked Lydia and his name's Matt, I don't know, to bring out the difference between the way scientists speak in terms of we and those sort of other words, as opposed to I. And that sort of thing. I was wondering if you could bring that out very quickly.
Okay. There are real problems of the way that we talk about climate change. I mean, we as a movement. The default mode is to adopt third-party expressions, distancing expressions. Remember that the overwhelming kind of like denial tendency is for us to push this thing away, to say it's something which is somewhere else, someone else's problem in the future, and so on. And that just works its way into our language. We'd start saying, scientists tell us that climate change is the greatest threat the world faces. Right? So someone else is saying that this is a problem that someone else faces. Or we use this kind of weird phrase, save the planet, you know, save the planet, as if that's an externalizing thing. We're pushing it far away. The planet is something which is, I don't live on a planet, I live on my house and my community in a, you know, little corner of Wales. That's what I feel is my home, not the planet. And then we go on and then we either accuse people, we say, you need to reduce your emissions. Or we use this kind of like inclusive, mealy-mouthed use of we. We really need to do something about it. This is the greatest threat that we face, and so we need to take action. And the whole danger of we is that again lays it wide open for people to step back from the whole problem and say, yes, we need to do something about it. Because once you start saying we, you suggest that the only way any action can happen is if we do it. And so everyone can go, well, I don't see we're not doing it. Where's the we? I'll do it when we do it. The thing I encourage people to do in terms of a communication is as much as possible to talk about themselves. And we're very reluctant, especially in Britain, to kind of like say, this is what I think, this is what I do. But I think this is the way to win people over. So in the course of a conversation, to start talking about belief, to say, listen, I believe this is the biggest problem we face. I'm deeply concerned about this. I'm really concerned. To the point I'm getting quite scared about this. This is why I'm taking responsibility for my contribution to this problem. I'm taking political action to produce change. And I've made a decision to fly as little as possible. And speaking personally, that means I haven't flown in years. This is in a way the only way to actually win people over, because people ultimately build their opinions and their own beliefs not on what they read or the graphs they see or the arguments of the scientists, but what the people around them and the people who they trust say. We need to recognize that's actually how change happens. And so by going and speaking personally from the heart about what we feel and what we do, we produce change. But there's another thing too, which is if you go and you present people with this thing as some kind of objective thing, objective reality, saying, you can't fly. How can you fly? Because this is such a huge problem. What happens is immediately everybody's denial defenses, they all start clocking up. Or they start actually really reacting and saying, don't judge me for what I do. But again, if you're speaking from the heart saying, this is what I think, no one can argue with that. And even somebody who and if you say, well, I don't fly, no one can argue with that. They can fly. You're not telling them they should. You just say, I'm not doing this anymore. This is ultimately also the only defense against the whole, what I would call denial industry of these kind of like, fraudulent quack scientists who are wheeled out to say that, climate change isn't caused by carbon dioxide or isn't happening, or, there's thousands of variations on this, is that if we talk about what scientists say, then all that our opponents need to do is find another scientist who says something different. But if what we do is we say, you know what, I've looked at it, I've weighed it up, and this is what I believe, it doesn't matter a stuff what someone else says. It's like, no, this is what I believe. Like it or lump it. And I think, therefore, if we take, again, it's all about ownership. We take personal ownership of this issue. This is a core belief for me. This is what I think. This is what I'm doing about it. That's what wins people over.